list.
Hey, let's go. Let's go. Okay. And welcome everyone to this installment of VTuber 101. Now, as I've stated on Twitter and in the stream title as well, this isn't going to be the final variant. This is the Skuffed version, this is the draft, this is me putting my current stuff out there. So that I can get a feel for what it's like after it's been presented, make some changes, and then put the final version out later on this week. Yeah, how's that for a plan? So, every single bit in this series has been structured in terms of baby steps. Well, I say baby steps, but it's more, I suppose it'd be more fair to say that it's been structured so that you get a feel of starting from absolute zero and then just progressing up and up and up. So, just to set your expectations, up until this point, we've talked about. We've talked about a couple things. We've talked about the history of VTubing. We've talked about how to get set up. We've talked about how to figure out what we want to do on this visual stage, and what else. We've also talked about some things to consider, different pieces of software, and packaging that all together as an identity, as a brand, and getting ourselves all set up on Twitch. So, you're probably thinking, with all that technology, with all that streaming stuff set up, that you'll have off the bat 100% best stream ever once you hit stream and all the rest of that jazz. In reality, it's probably going to look close. Your performance as a whole is more than likely going to look like a performance from the movie Airplane. It'll be there, it'll be a performance, but it might not be everything you thought it was going to be. And there's a very real chance. Sorry, I just can't get enough coffee. There's a very real chance that your first performance is going to go to pot. And you know what, that's okay. Like we've said in previous performances, that's okay. Your first performance isn't necessarily going to be your best. In fact, it's not even possibly going to go well. And know what, that's okay. That's okay, because I'm a firm believer that with creative endeavours, it's best to use the Bob Ross method. And that is that where you don't have mistakes, you just have little accidents, and you just learn how to be better, and that's okay. Now, if you want to know more specifics on how to prep for your first stream, or there's something in this presentation that you feel like could use a little bit more explaining, or you want certain topics touched on that maybe were in here, or were not included, I'll take note of that, and when I reach affiliate, I'll take all of those notes and put it together and then do a much longer, much more in-depth video on what your day one will look like. Just to make, just to reiterate, like I do in all of my streams, I'm not a AAA streamer, I don't claim to be, I don't claim to know everything. And I don't claim to know every single little thing that will lead to your success as a streamer. And I don't think anyone can. All I claim is these are going to be some very useful things, especially if you're starting from ground zero and you want some sort of a reference guide. Now, for the purposes of this, which will be essentially the last video in this series, unless I either redo one of the 4 videos, or I do an entirely separate video focusing in on one topic in particular that I've talked about. This is what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on the plan, what we're going to do. We're going to focus on the plan, we're going to focus on the big picture, we're going to focus on things you need to do. I'm scary. I'm scared. I think I need my blanket. We're going to focus on things to do in a sort of pre-flight check, and that it's going to be easier to show you what that is rather than to just explain it here. And then we're going to talk about things to think about going forward. So, you might log on to Twitch one day trying to get an idea of what it is that you want to do on your day one. And you'll see a bunch of people streaming different things. You'll see a bunch of topics that are maybe not in the top of the categories that what's happening. Oh yeah, so this is the final video in a series called VTuber 101, where I talk about things you need to consider before you become a VTuber, as well as different little tips and tricks and things of that nature. In this particular stream, we're doing a Skuffed recording of what your day one is probably going to look like, how to plan it, how to prep for it, and then what to do going forward. So, anyway, so you're probably going to look on here, you're probably going to see a bunch of different games, people streaming different stuff, streaming different games, doing it in different styles. Anyway.
Watch this.
You're probably going to see a bunch of people streaming different stuff with various amounts of success, and then you're probably going to wander over to something like Twitch Tracker, where you'll see a whole bunch of people divided amongst people who are streaming at the moment, and you'll see a bunch of different numbers, and you'll be thinking, how the hell am I supposed to find any success? Don't be this guy. Just whenever you're feeling stressed about potentially not succeeding, or things of that nature, just Hakuna Matata means no worries, because success will come. I've seen people of many different levels, many different backgrounds, succeed at doing things I never even thought would be possible. And you can have many people streaming the exact same thing in the exact same way, or maybe they'll stream like the exact same game, but they'll have a different spin on it. It's all about VTubing is a creative endeavor, and because it's a creative endeavor, there's no end of ways that you can do things, and there's no one way to success. And you can have it where people can do one thing, but their creative interpretation will make them individually successful, even though they're all pretty much doing the exact same ish. So your day one can be done one of two ways. There are many, many other ways that you can do it, but when you boil down all the possibilities and you simmer and you put it into a good syrup, not the best analogy, but will work. This is just your day one will look like one of two things. You'll either just do a stream where you do your ish, whether it's gaming, singing, or otherwise, or you'll do what's called a day one. First, we'll focus on what a day one stream will like. So, a day one stream will possibly look something like this, where you'll just, again, you'll open up and you'll just do the voodoo that you do. So it could be something like you'll go into VR chat, if that's what you want to be doing on your channel. You could be playing old school retro games like Pikmin, or you could, if you're an artist, you'll just either doodle, work on projects. You could potentially even use this as an opportunity to take in commissions. In fact, SkyT is very well known for that. And she's been horrendously successful. Well, I said horrendously successful isn't the right word. She's been very successful in doing it. But you might be saying, well, what the hell is a debut? In fact, this word's been floated around quite a bit. There are many different opinions on what that is and isn't, etc., so forth. And I think it can be best distilled in this sort of visual way, because I'm a very visual person. So I'll generally start with an introduction where you'll talk about you'll talk about your character, maybe you'll mention like a couple of fun facts about them, and if you have a lore dump, and that could be either a presentation, that could be a speech, that could be a video, that could, if you want to get really complicated with it, it could be a collab that you do with other people. This is generally the part of your stream with all that will happen. Next, you'll go into discussions about what it is that you're going to be doing. This is where you'll say, hey, I am ... this character, I'm going to be doing art, I'm going to be playing games, I'm going to be focusing on retro consoles, I'm going to be playing Genshin Impact. It's where you introduce what you're going to be known for as a streamer, as a content creator. And you don't have to do any one thing. In fact, it's very, very common, almost to a point where you could quote-unquote call it an industry standard, even though it's not, where people do more than one thing, where people who stream on certain days or do commissions on certain days, and the list is endless. But if you only want to do one thing, and I advise you do one thing to start out with, just to keep it simple, this is where you discuss that. But really, the possibilities of what you can do are endless, because it's your virtual stage. You can do what you want, provided, obviously conform to community guidelines and all that. You'll also be, this is also where you'll focus on next, on what your channel's main focus is going to be. It's going to be, again, where it differs from what you'll do on the channel is this is where you can establish your brand. Are you going to be known as a cozy, energetic person? Are you going to be known as a cozy person? Are you going to be known as being more energetic? Are you going to be a deviant? And this is also where you can probably focus on things that you are going to or not going to do, or things that you just straight up not expect from your community at all. Also what you can do, after that's all talked about, is you can talk about a couple of your favorite things that either you or your character does like. You can talk about maybe you have a favorite genre of games. Maybe there's one game in particular that you like. Maybe you like certain colors, certain aesthetics. Again, it's just further developing the story, the lore behind you or your character. And it just helps give everything just that little bit more depth. You'll also talk about what your end goal is. A lot of people, when they're just starting off, have like 101 different goals and 101 different things that they want to achieve. And again, you can have more than one goal that you want to achieve. It's perfectly fine and more than doable. And these goals, they can either be short-term goals, as in I want to get this game finished in this amount of time, or I want to get so many kill streaks in that particular game, or I want to speedrun something. It could be long-term, as in I want to reach affiliate in 6 months. I want to develop myself to a point where I can join an agency. It can be any number of those short-term or long-term goals. But if you're finding you don't know specifically what your goals are, or you feel like your goals may not be as grand as some people you may have seen in the past, don't worry. It's okay to not be certain about what that is, but if you are going to discuss what your end goals are, and I highly encourage you to think about what your goals are before you start your day one, this is the section of your stream where you would discuss that. And to finish, you can end it with a Q&A session with your audience, or you can go straight into doing what it is that your channel will be known for. Now, every section before this, again, it depends on how you structure it. Could take 15 minutes, it could take 30 minutes, it could take 45 minutes, it could take an hour. Do take some time to draft out what everything will be like before this final bit. Because especially when you are progressing, if being something like affiliate is your goal, you want to maximize the amount of viewers you have in your stream, because it'll do it on an average over a 29-30 day period. So if you find that streamers are going to be dropping in and off, and this is something that you probably won't know until you stream for a long time, it might pay to keep it short. And especially with debuts, it's not something you have to do, day one. If you find that you want to start by streaming and then progress into doing like a debut later on, it'll allow you to further get a picture of, okay, what is an appropriate time to do a quote-unquote debut, well, not a quote-unquote, a debut stream for. This will allow you a certain amount of time, which will make writing the script both more challenging, but it'll give you a target to shoot for when it comes to putting together everything before the finish section. Because if you find that every section before this is going to take a decent chunk of time, you may only have so many minutes to answer a couple of questions or play games or draw pictures before you start to hurt your viewer average. But if you find that you don't have a viewer average and you're going to start, or if you find that you don't know what your viewer average is because you're starting day one with a debut, my advice would be to keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it simple, because you want to introduce yourself and your brand as quickly as possible so you can get to either answering the questions that people might have or going straight into doing what it is that your channel will be known for without, again, hurting your viewer average. But putting all that aside, the one thing that I recommend you do is just have fun. Because streaming, based on what I've found and what I've learned and what I've taken notes of people who are as successful or more successful than I am, the key thing is to have fun and be very genuine with your experience, because your audience will thrive off of that. If you're having a good time and you can get people to buy in that you're having a good time and you're having a genuinely, fun go of it, your community will tap into that and bite onto it, and that's what makes them come back for more. Because if you're worried about getting more views and more views and more viewers, you want to have a fun and engaging experience for them to want to come back into next. But really, I wouldn't worry about viewers coming back too soon, because the more you focus on the numbers, the faster you'll burn out. So at least for the first month, 2 months, I highly recommend that you just not focus on numbers at all. Just numbers can go away. You just focus on having fun. Focus on playing video games. Focus on drawing, because that's all this is. This is just fun. And it can be fun, and it can be enjoyable, it can be a wonderful adventure. And the last thing you want to do is suffer from the burnout of going overanalyzing every little thing you do. Because there's this wonderful quote that I heard, I think it was from Martin Seidemann's analysis paralysis, where you spend so much time analyzing every little mistake that you think you're doing and referencing against analytics and people coming in and out and measuring yourself against people who are more successful, that you start to not focus on why it is that you're here, what it is that you're doing, and actually enjoying yourself, having fun. That's, I believe, to be more important than numbers. But yeah, now that you've got all that, it's time to talk about our pre-flight check. Now, again, this is not going to be a completely exhaustive list. If I were to do like a full-on, checking every little single knob, switch, every single setting that you could possibly have, if I were to create a manual that is just a pre-flight check for VTubers before they stream, so that they can be certain to a point that everything is going to be quote-unquote fine, I wouldn't be able to fit it within this presentation. So what I've done is I've highlighted what I believe to be the most important things for you to just check off, while also allowing for you to have some mistakes and then make corrections so that things can get back to what you would deem to be an appropriate level of completeness, so that you can hit stream and have a wonderful time. Now, when you're streaming and you are a VTuber, the one thing you want to do is make sure that you have your avatar in hand from your artist before you do anything. Because if you don't have an avatar while you can stream, by definition you won't be a VTuber, you'll just be another streamer, which is fine. But we're talking about getting prepped for being a VTuber, so it's kind of important to have that in hand. Next thing you want to do, and again, everything throughout this presentation has been specific to and only to Twitch, because that's what I stream to, but provided you chop and change things that are specific to setting up for YouTube, this list will by and large still apply. So you want to make sure that I spelled that wrong, but that's fine. We'll just pretend that that's spelled correctly. Don't look at it. You want to make sure that Twitch is set up in OBS. So like we said in previous streams, go in, log into Twitch through OBS so that you don't have to do the whole stream key thing. You want to make sure that you run autoconfig to make sure that the connection between your computer and Twitch is going to allow you to use the resolutions and bit rates that you want to. And you also want to make sure that if you are going to hand the recording of your stream off to someone, that you have your recording folder set up. And I mention this now because a lot of times people have many different hard drives, myself included, where they'll have the operating system on one, the games on another, and then their recordings on a completely separate hard drive. So make sure that that's set up, because the last thing you want to do is have 101 different 3, 4, 5 hour recordings on your operating system's hard drive, and then you have to manually send them over to where they're actually supposed to go. Pretty easy to figure out how to set this up in OBS. And will take you no time at all, and it's better to get this set up beforehand so you don't have the stress of having to worry about that post-stream. Now, one scene that I highly recommend that you get set up, and depending on how artsy you are, might take a little bit, but I highly recommend you get an intro scene set up, and this doesn't have to be anything exceptionally fancy. Like, I'll just quickly switch back to mine now. Yeah, so that's all I have. So I have starting soon screen, which says, hey, streams starting soon. It has a link to my major socials that I use, and I've also included a chat box in there. And if you want to know how to create something like that, if you reference back to the previous streams where we talked about how to create overlays on Canva, just quickly touch them up in GIMP, and then set all that up in Stream Elements, that's something that can be done with next to no effort. If you are going to be requiring an artist for that, that could be something to be consider prior to doing your day one stream. So if you know that your artist is going to require X amount of days to get that set up, that's X amount of days until you can have that, put into Twitch, so that put into OBS, sorry, so that you can have that ready to go for day one. Yeah, and again, if you are using art, try to make sure that it is copyright free. Make sure that New Zealand moment, hardy har har har. Try to make sure that your art and your music is copyright free. And again, I am a big believer in using hotkeys. But again, like I've said in the previous streams, try to make sure that the hotkey that you use is not going to be a hotkey that you would, it's not going to be a key on your keyboard that you would use when you're not gaming, and it's also not going to be a key that will interfere with stuff that you're doing in game, because the last thing you want to do is, nice. Yeah, because the last thing you want to do is have it where you're playing a game, right, and then you accidentally hit a button that you set up to change scenes, but it's also a button that ejects you into space, and then you suffocate and die. That would not be a good time. So double check that your hotkeys aren't going to conflict with anything, but definitely set them up, because that will make everything way smooth. Because once you have your hotkeys set up, you can have OBS open on one screen if you're using a dual screen setup, and then you can have your game active on another, and then all you have to do is have your game active and going, and you can just hit a hotkey, mess around in your game, and then it'll just transition into what it is that you're doing. More fluid, more better, more professional, more very nice. When it comes to your game scene setup, this is where things will get a bit more particular. If you are going to use music in both your intro and your game scene, like I am now, make sure that your sources are set up. We have gone over this in a previous video. Test. Make sure that any art and music that you're using in either is okay to use. Make sure all your sources are set up. So these are things like your overlays, these are things like your avatar, these are things like your chat windows, your game captures. Make sure everything is set up and working. If you are using an avatar that requires a program like mine, which all avatars do, make sure that your avatar is set up in that program, and make sure that everything is easy peasy and tied into where it needs to be. And again, set up your hotkey, because if you don't set up a hotkey for your game scene, and then you're in your intro scene trying to switch between, it is going to be a little bit of a kerfluffle to have that sort of transition easily. And then once all that's set up, you want to get into the test phase. So you want to have it where you do like a quick little test stream to Twitch or whatever it may be, and you want to just go ham for like an hour, 2 hours, maybe even 30 minutes if that's all you have time for. And what you're doing is you're looking for any error, you're looking for anything not configured correctly, you're looking to make sure that everything's displaying on Twitch that's supposed to be displaying on Twitch. You want to make sure that your resolution and quality is very nice, and everything's good, cool. But if it's not, make a note of it, and then retest as many times as needed. Obviously, you can see here that there are many errors that I've made in this because I can't spell. which is why I'm testing now. See, this is an example of, well, probably a very good example, but very poor quality on my side, of how you can test to find little errors in your presentation so that you can have it very nice for your day one stream. And once everything's set up, once you have everything planned out, once you have your thought out if you're going to either stream or debut, and you have everything lined up, you're all ducks in a row, and you're ready to hit stream, go. But after your day one stream, after everything's done, after you've gone, okay, so I've done my day one stream, I've got everything ticked off, I've done all my research, everything was perfect, it was a flawless experience, or maybe it wasn't so flawless and you had a couple of things to learn from. You might say, well, where to from here? What is next? What am I supposed to be doing from this point going forward? I can't tell you that, and I don't think anyone should. And that's not me being mean, that's not me trying to be negative. It's like I've been saying, creativity isn't a written standard. It's not something what you can quantify. It's not something that you can say, if you don't do it in this specific way, you are not being creative and therefore you fail. Creativity is different and unique to everyone. It will be goal specific, it will be based on you, it will be based on what it is, who you are, who your character is. There are many different things that go into you being creative. And if you find that you're not being creative, the mere process of starting to find your creativity is an adventure in itself. And if you find that you're stuck, know that there are many people out there who can help and guide you to shape your creativity. And there are many different resources that you can go to, be it different streamers, sources outside of Twitch, or close friends and family that can go, well, maybe you can do this, or maybe you can change that. But ultimately, the future of where your channel goes beyond this point is entirely up to you. That being said, there are a couple of points I would like to bring up. First, breathe. Because to get yourself up to this point where you want to stream and to go through the process of doing a day one and learning all of the everything to get yourself to this point is a process. So probably feeling exhausted, probably hyperventilating, or maybe you're like getting a little bit nervous before stream. Breathe. Plan as much as you can, as carefully as you can. The last thing you want to do is to completely have a scuffed experience because you either didn't plan correctly or you didn't think things through enough. Plan to succeed, or you will probably not have the best experience. But even if you do make a few kerfluffles, use the Bob Ross method. Happy accidents, because mistakes are opportunities to learn, not full stops because you failed. And be okay to get messy and make mistakes. Again, you don't want to intentionally make mistakes to learn. It is always, by and large, best to plan, prepare before you execute. But don't get too bogged down with the fact that you made a mistake or a snafu or anything like that. Because these can oftentimes be our greatest teachers. So learn from it. So be afraid to get in it, get messy, make mistakes. Because I've seen Nina Kosaka, for example, is a great example of someone who is an older streamer who's been very stuck in her ways as to who she is as a person and what her identity is, and she's made a shitload of mistakes as a streamer and done some things that are very much taboos. But because she's been open to understanding what those mistakes were and then developing from them, she's developed and grown and learned from it to have a more richer experience for both herself and her fans. And also be you. Because like I've mentioned previously, some of the best streamers have the most success not because they're trying to be something that they're not, but because they're being authentic with who they are and who they're trying to be. And the more you can practice that, at least in my opinion, the easier you'll find success. But in spite of all of that, have a great adventure. VTubing is just you sharing your passions. It is just you projecting your hobbies to the world, whatever that hobby might be, whether it's drawing, whether it's gaming, whether it's singing, performing, collaborating. Whatever your performance is, make sure there's something you can have fun doing. Make sure there's something you enjoy doing. And have it a very wonderful time sharing that experience with the world. Because I can assure you, if you do that, and you hustle, and you grind, and you learn, and you progress, you will have, at least as far as I've experienced, a very grand adventure into the unknown, learning many different things, meeting many different people, and learning a lot about not who you are as a streamer, but also who you are as a person as well. And I'd like to thank you for watching this far. This is, chronologically at least, the last video in this series, because while I would like to create, while I think you may want, I should say, more videos in the future, there's really nothing else I can touch on, because everything that you need to learn going forward, and there are things you need to learn going beyond this, it's not something that you can learn in a presentation. It's not something that someone can necessarily teach you. It is something that you'll have to learn through experience while you charge towards your goals, and learn based on who it is that you are, who your character is, and what your audience will expect from you. And if you are one of the people who has joined in on the stream on Twitch, I just want to say thank you, whether it's for a minute, a second, an hour, or a day. I can't imagine someone watching this for an entire day, although maybe that might be a good thing to do in the future. We'll see. No matter how much time you spend here, I appreciate your presence. It means the world to me to know that you spend at least some time out of your day to come and watch this stream. I will be streaming again Friday this time. We will be playing more Saints Row. We'll be getting into a bit more Saints Row 3. And that'll be Friday, New Zealand at about 7:30 UTC 13. So plug that into the world clock and see how it goes. But if you want to keep up to date with what I'm streaming, when I'm streaming, who I'm streaming with, you can type in exclamation point links into the chat at any time. This will link you through to my link tree. I'm active on Twitter, TikTok, Discord, YouTube, and right here at home on Twitch. And if you feel like being especially connected to the community, I also have a Discord server running, so you can bypass that link tree and type in exclamation point Discord into the chat. This will link you straight through to my Discord, where you can send message to me and tell me that I'm a big silly poodle head if that's what you're so inclined to do. And if you feel like funding this channel, again, like I say every stream, I do not require your funding. I am more than capable of running this channel by myself. I do not need your money, but if you feel like you want to fund a particular project, or you want me to create a something, or you just want to say, hey, here's money to help make things a little bit easier, you can type in exclamation point dono into the chat at any time. This is linked through to my Ko-Fi, where you can just throw a couple of cents at me. I don't need your money, but you know, if you do feel the need to donate, I would appreciate it very much, because that would be, you know, a very generous thing for anyone to do. And until we see each other again, I hope your day goes well. I hope your day went well. I hope you achieve all it is that you want to achieve. Until we see each other again, goodbye for now.